The Steelers play the Buccaneers on Sunday. Is this the last time they'll get a chance to beat Tom Brady? And can Kenny Pickett pull off the upset? Let's talk about it. All right, welcome to Steeler Country. I am Tony Serino. Today on the show, we are previewing Steelers versus Buccaneers. The game kicks off at 1 p.m. Eastern Time on Fox. This is a Fox game. This is the last time the Steelers will ever get a chance to play Tom Brady, in all likelihood, right? In all likelihood, although I suppose these two teams could meet again in February, right? Let's not rule that out. And I guess, Tom Brady could play for another 30 years and we could watch another, another couple dozen of these. Tom Brady has been a thorn in the side of the Pittsburgh Steelers for so many years now. It would be nice that if in the last time these two teams played that the Steelers could pull this off, could beat Tom Brady, because, let's be quite honest about Brady versus the Steelers. This has been a relatively one-sided matchup, hasn't it? How many, and really when you think about the modern history of the Steelers, right? Let's just go since Heinz Field was built. Has there been a bigger thorn in the side than Tom Brady to the Pittsburgh Steelers? I don't think there really has. I mean, they've, you've seen like the Joe Flacco's of the world come through, Carson Palmer's of the world come through, but the Steelers, they traded blows and generally came out ahead, even the Peyton Mannings of the world. But Tom Brady has been, matchup has just not gone well. I believe the last time that the Steelers played against Tom Brady, that was the opener, the year that was 2019. So that was the year that Ben tore his elbow in week 2. That was a 33-3 game, if I remember correctly. Yeah, not been fun, this matchup. And is Sunday's matchup going to be fun? Well, here's what's fun about it. We get to watch Kenny Pickett versus Tom Brady. This is going to be the last time that we're ever going to watch Tom Brady against Steelers. At least the cool thing is it's like the start of this new era for the Steelers, and it's not Mitch Trubisky. It's not this kind of bridge quarterback. It is the new generation, Kenny Pickett, coming in. I mean, it does, this does speak to the longevity of Brady, doesn't it? That Tom Brady entered the league 4 years before Ben, and is now playing beyond Ben Roethlisberger and into the into kind of the post-Ben era and the Kenny Pickett era of Pittsburgh. Boy, I can't wait for Brady to retire. So we get to watch Kenny versus Brady. Now, okay, these two won't be on the field at the same time. So let's break it down realistically, right? Because while Kenny versus Brady is a nice headline, really what's going to happen here is Kenny Pickett's going to have to go up against this Buccaneers defense. And as we've talked about for the past couple weeks now, really since they put Kenny Pickett into the lineup against the Jets, we've all been talking about, boy, this stretch run before the bye is about as difficult a lineup of teams you could give a young rookie quarterback, because these defenses, it was last week against Buffalo, the best defense in the league, and if not the best, then certainly a top 2 or 3 defense. And then, of course, you got the Buccaneers this week who, well, maybe they're not number 1, what do you want to put them? Top 5? Certainly top 10. This is certainly one of the better defenses in the league. They're number 3 in DVOA. They're number 6 in points per game. They're number 8 in EPA per play, and they're number 4 in yards per play. And so, for those who don't know, DVOA is Football Outsider stat is essentially EPA per play, but opponent adjusted, right? So if you take that number 8 EPA per play, but then you look at, okay, what are the offenses that they played? How good are those offenses? It actually, moves them up in the rankings. So 3rd in DVOA. Now, okay, so the Steelers, so Kenny Pickett's going to have to, in his first 2 starts, go up against 2 of the best defenses in the National Football League, right? Number 1 in Buffalo in DVOA, number 3 in Tampa Bay in DVOA. So you might say, well, he already did well, right? He didn't look like a disaster against Buffalo. That was a decent game from Kenny. While on the scoreboard, the Steelers didn't get points, I think we can point to a lot of things that went wrong in that game that weren't Kenny Pickett that led to the Steelers not getting points. But certainly when you're just judging Kenny Pickett and his performance in and of itself, I think we can all sit here today and say, okay, Kenny was fine. Maybe it wasn't a great performance from Kenny, but it certainly wasn't a disqualifying performance. It certainly wasn't a disaster performance, which when you're talking about a rookie quarterback going on the road against the best defense in the league, boy, that could be, that's certainly what you might expect. Now, the one thing about this game against Buffalo, that's different about the game against Buffalo, is that while Tampa does have a great defense, it's a very different style than how Buffalo plays defense. Buffalo is very much the kind of team that's going to sit in nickel, right? They're going to sit in the same personnel pretty much all game, right? They know what their best players are. They're just kind of say, look, we're dictating, like, this is what we're doing. And you have, you get us to come out of it. And teams can't. I mean, that's just, that's how good Leslie Frazier has. Very disciplined defense over there. Great front four. They don't need to blitz. They got very good players in the secondary who, again, the communication, and there's not guys running free and whatnot. And that Buffalo defense is a really sound team, and that's why they're the best in the league. But you talk about the Buccaneers, what do they do? They're very different. I mean, we talked about Buffalo. They don't blitz. They're going to kind of rush forward. They're going to get pressure that way. No, Tampa's going to blitz you. Tampa's coming after you. This is a heavy blitz scheme. They're going to bring 5. They're going to bring 6. They're going to try and get to the quarterback that way. And they've done a very good job thus far. 29% blitz percentage. That's 29% of plays they are blitzing. That's 8th most in the National Football League. And so, okay, here's a new challenge for Kenny, right? Because how often have we really seen him go up against the blitz? And certainly a game where that is the style of defense the opponent was going to play. I mean, in preseason, we didn't see a lot of it because in preseason, you just generally don't see a lot of blitz, right? I mean, a lot of it's very vanilla in preseason. Against the Jets, a little bit. But again, those only 13 plays. Against Buffalo, almost none. And now here we are against Tampa, where I think we're going to see, a relatively healthy blitz scheme. And so the challenge from Kenny Pickett here is going to be not just, adjusting the protections. And that's going to be key number 1 here, right? Because you got to figure out where that blitz is coming from, who's coming, who's not coming. Where am I sliding protection to? Do I have enough protection to actually to block everybody? Or is going to be a situation where I need to slide the protection in such a way, if it's a 5-man protection, they're bringing 6. Okay, slide the protection in such a way that the guy who's furthest from me is the free rusher. And if it's a situation where it's essentially going to be a designed free rusher, 5-man protection against 6-man blitz, make sure that you don't have that guy coming up the middle, right? Because that's going to ruin the play. So it's going to be that challenge from Kenny, the communication with him and his offensive line, the kind of diagnosing the defense. What am I looking at? Where's it coming from? And then the other thing here, and this is something we saw back in that game against New England, is making sure, and this is not just a Kenny thing, this is a Matt Canada thing. This is a Mike Sullivan thing. I mean, this is the offensive minds here need to get together and figure out, okay, we're going to face a blitz heavy scheme. The answer to every blitz can't just be, well, we're going to try and check it down to the running back, right? Our hot read is essentially, if we ever get a guy, if we ever get a situation where it's, we need to go hot, the hot is just the running back. That's what happened against New England a lot. And that was a disaster. I mean, that was just, I think everyone remembers the end of that game when, checking it down to Najee on 3rd and 4 or 3rd and 10, I believe. There was the one that they tried to float it to Judon, which actually could have been a decent play. I mean, that was probably a more advantageous matchup given that Najee had a step on him but couldn't get it there. But again, I think this team just needs to be more, they need more creative overall offensively. But certainly in these situations, they need to be more creative with where they're going with the football. Right? Because look, when you're blitzing, this is kind of football 101 stuff. Okay, if I'm bringing 4, then I have 7 guys in coverage. If I'm bringing more, if I'm bringing 5 or I'm bringing 6, okay, then there's only 6 or 5 guys in coverage. And what does that lead to? That leads to one-on-one, right? That means, hey, we're going to have an advantage somewhere. And I just got to figure out where that is. And generally that's going to be one-on-one, wide receiver versus corner. Now we've talked about, going back to preseason, how good this wide receiver core is. Deontay on one side, we've George Pickens on the other, and then hey, Claypool in the slot. Gonna give you a lot of advantageous matchups if you can figure out some one-on-ones. It hasn't worked out that way thus far. Outside of George Pickens, which wide receiver do you really trust in this offense? And is Matt Canada going to open up George Pickens' route tree to put him in situations where it's not just like, if this game just comes down to like Kenny's, slinging up go balls to George Pickens on every blitz opportunity, like, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that's a terrible game plan because George Pickens is awesome, but I'd love to see more creativity out of this offense. I think they are going to have to move the pocket a lot though, because remember, this is still a formidable pass rush, in general. We'll talk about Vita Vea a little bit later, but this is still a Tampa team that is going to get after the quarterback. They're going to blitz them, and guys like Devin White are coming But they've got a solid front four. So I think a lot of moving pocket stuff is still going to be, within there. And then the other question I have here with Todd Bowles and the way he plays defense is, look, I think we're all expecting, and it's very easy for us as you look at, okay, this is a team that likes to blitz and they're going up against a rookie. Like bringing pressure on a rookie quarterback is an easy way to get them into mistakes. But does Bowles feel like he can kind of play a little, instead of playing checkers, let's play a little bit of chess. You think we're going to blitz a lot. Maybe we do bring some pressure, but it's simulated, right? Meaning that it's a 4-man pressure and guys are bailing out. I and try to confuse Kenny that way. We have not seen how many times, you can probably count on one hand how many times we've really seen Kenny be genuinely confused by what he's looking at, right? Where he kind of gets the wide eye. I don't know what's happening here. How many times have you really seen Kenny in a situation where he throws the ball and it's just, he didn't see a defender? Yeah, I mean, I've seen it going back to camp, but as far as in a game situation, I guess you can argue that interception he threw last week against Buffalo, potentially he didn't see that defender, although again, I think that was a poorly thrown ball. But regardless, I think there is a little bit of this that could happen here where, and I like this for Kenny because once again, as we're trying to judge who Kenny Pickett is, the more of these situations that we can find ourselves in. I would have loved to see this in preseason. I would love to see this earlier on in the year, but here we are. It's week 6, and fine, we're going to get our answers here. But let's see how Kenny does against these situations, heavy blitz, or the kind of they're going to bail out. Can Kenny kind of see both things, right? Not only where's the blitz coming from, but what coverage are they in? Where's my hot, right? Where am I going? I mean, there's a lot of things that Kenny's going to have to read and diagnose in this game. And then, we've seen from Kenny, this is a guy who does not look like a rookie quarterback. I mean, I think the biggest positive from Kenny so far is that his poise under pressure, and just his general kind of demeanor out there does not give you the feeling of a quarterback who doesn't know what he's doing, or is the game is too fast or everything's too big for him just yet, right? This is not the kind of player who has to this point in his career felt like someone who, well, this is going to be a long process to string him along, right? I mean, I'm almost tempted when I talk about Kenny Pickett now, I'm almost tempted to change the conversation because look, we still should be talking about Kenny Pickett as a rookie who is playing in his second start. I mean, that's really should be the baseline of like, look, let's have low expectations for Kenny and try to figure out who he is. But I've seen enough good from Kenny going all the way back to camp and into preseason and now, the 70 or so reps we have of him in the regular season that I'm tempted, and I know it's too early, but I'm tempted to change the conversation from is Kenny good to, okay, how good is Kenny? Right? Because remember, if you go back to the draft, my big concern with Kenny Pickett was not that this guy was going to come out and be a bust. The question was, could Kenny Pickett ever be considered an elite quarterback? Now it's not can I win games with Kenny. Can I win a Super Bowl with Kenny? And I think it's way too early for me to start to go there. But to be quite honest, Kenny's been so good thus far. I have to kind of tell myself, hey, don't start grading Kenny on this curve yet. I mean, it's game 2, Tony. I mean, it's game 2. But that's kind of where I am with Kenny at this point. And that's why I'm excited to see what he can do in this matchup against a defense that represents something different from what we've seen Kenny go up against thus far. Now, the other part of this, and this is kind of the silly part for the Steelers, is that remember when the Steelers, modus operandi this season or for the last 2 years was we're gonna get this running game going again. Remember how they fired Randy Fichtner and said, we're rebuilding this running game, boys. Like we're taking Najee Harris in the first round, and we're gonna go back to ground and pound style of football. Remember that? That was fun. That was a fun, how long did that last? Now, the running game this year, once again, disaster? Is disaster the right word? I mean, it just has not been good. They're 26th in DVOA, rushing DVOA, and 13th in EPA per play. Now, you may wonder, hey, how are those two things so far out of whack? Right? 13th in EPA per play does not seem that bad. And that's true. It does not. But remember, DVOA right now is starting to work in their opponent adjustments, and the Steelers played the Patriots run defense, who at this point is probably like bottom 10 in the league, and they played the Browns run defense, who is real bad, real bad. So obviously that's where the opponent adjustment part of this comes in DVOA. But the Steelers running game just has not gotten going whatsoever. And again, we talk about Najee Harris and his struggles this year, and is it an injury thing, or our defense is just not respecting the pass and they're kind of flying down to the ball? I think it's a two-pronged thing for Najee. Certainly, I don't think he looks healthy because he has even less explosion than he did a year ago. And Najee has never been a truly explosive running back. I mean, this was one of the big concerns about him coming out of college was, hey, is this guy ever going to be a big play type of runner? Even if he is good between the tackles, even if he is good in kind of short yardage, even if he is good at making people miss in space, even if he does have above average vision, does he have enough burst that in those situations when he can't, can he run free, right? Can he run for 20, 30 yards? Does he have that in his game? That's always been a concern. But even, this year, I just don't. I mean, he has no juice whatsoever. I mean, it is, when Jaylen Warren has the football versus Najee Harris has the football, and it's a night and day when it just comes to when it comes to burst. I mean, just raw, get up and go. And so Tomlin's talked about changes are coming and, all that. And obviously no starters are getting benched. I mean, you made the big one, right? You did the big one. That was benching Trubisky. At this point, like, who else is there really to bench? But, I would expect that Jaylen Warren is going to continue to get more reps. He's already kind of worked himself in on passing downs. And I would expect that the more Najee Harris struggles, the more we're going to see Jaylen Warren in the game. I also think that, and I said this going back to the preseason, I think that given where this team is right now, I think Jaylen Warren's a better back because I think Najee is too much trying. There's too often with Najee where he's trying to make more than there is. And I understand the concept there. It's a very Le'Veon thing of be patient, right? We're going to wait for the hole to develop and then we're going to go. Najee, maybe it's not necessarily a patience thing, but it's like, hey, I'm going to kick this outside because, if I hit the hole, that's like a 1 or 2 yard game. But if I can kick it outside and then I can make something happen. But the problem for Najee is like, there's no kicking it outside here. Right? There's no rushing lanes to be had. You just got to take what's there. And I think that's been a problem for Najee. Because he doesn't have the burst. I mean, you go outside, well, what's going to happen here. His yards before contact are not good. Neither are Jaylen Warren's. I think Jaylen Warren actually has less, but that's because it's pretty simple. Jaylen Warren hits the hole. I mean, Jaylen Warren hits the hole and hits it fast. Najee's kind of, and I don't want to use the term dancing because this is like a classic fan thing. It's like too much dancing. But if you did want to boil it down, like, this is like a rare case where it's like, no, really though, it actually is too much dancing for now. Like, you just got to go, Najee. I understand that you want to be 150 yards a game type player, but you're not playing behind the Browns offensive line, you're playing behind the Steelers. And while this offensive line isn't atrocious anymore, right? It's not the worst offensive line in the league anymore. It's still not good. You still kind of just going to take what they're going to give you. Now, the problem for the Steelers is, and this goes back to what happened against Cincinnati, right? When you have these kind of big, kind of space stuffing defensive linemen, I mean, it's impossible for the interior of the Steeler offensive line to move them. DJ Reader has been a huge problem when they play the Bengals, and I think Vita Vea is going to be very similar in this game. He's going to be a problem here, and are the Steelers going to want? They've kind of relied more this year on outside zone, although even against outside zone, like Vita Vea is, he's not just a space mover or not just a space guy. He's a mover as well. I mean, this guy is an athletic prospect even for his size, and so even if you want to run more outside zone, like he can be a disruptor there as well. I just don't think that from a matchup standpoint, do I expect the Steelers running game to get going in this one, even if they played more Warren? I don't. Like, do I think the Steelers are going to get anywhere close to 100, 150 yards rushing in this game? I think we're going to be the same with Ben, right? 60 yards, 80 yards if you're lucky. And it's going to come down to, like, can Kenny make things happen offensively? And it's just a frustrating offense to watch. And that's where we are right now with this Steeler team. Going over to the defensive side of the ball, when we talk about the Bucs going up against the Bucs offense. I mean, the first thing we have to talk about before we talk about any matchup related things, it's the injury problems on offense. Actually, let me just pull up the injury report real quick because so you guys are the practice report, I should say, because it is really, really bad. Who is it? Brooke Pryor is usually, Brooke Pryor of ESPN usually does a pretty good job of tweeting this out every day. I mean, it's been bad for a couple weeks. We know last week the Steelers secondary dealt with a ton of injury. But man, it's getting worse. If you look at this, here it is. So this is the injury report As of today, and again, I'm recording this on Thursday evening Eastern time, so the Thursday practice report is out. Now, Friday is the one you really need to pay attention to. We are probably a little early to talk about, it's woe is me, and this team's going to go in with basically nobody in the secondary. But certainly, when you look at the fact that Cam Sutton has not practiced yet this week, nor has Akilla Witherspoon, Levi Wallace is in the concussion protocol. He's limited today. This happened with with Terrell Edmonds last week, where he kind of returned to practice, but he was still in the protocol. So is Levi coming out of the protocol? Seems like Edmonds is. He's been a full participant all week, but then Minka with that knee has not practiced at all this week. And then neither has Larry Ogunjobi, who has that back injury. Now, potentially with a Larry Ogunjobi back injury, I could see him returning to full practice tomorrow and playing. I could see that. I think the two guys who I could see that happening to are Minka with the knee, right? He just returns to full practice. Because again, I think it's a situation where you have a veteran player. Tomlin's not going to be like, hey, you got to practice on Thursday in order to play. So I could see both those guys returning tomorrow. But the real problem here is those corners. When you're talking about the Steelers' top three corners, DNP, and in the concussion protocol. If those guys don't play, I mean, if the Steelers are down three corners in this one, and the starting outside corners for the Steelers are going to be James Pierre and Josh Jackson again, with Arthur Maulet in the slot against Tom Brady, I think we all know what's going to happen there. I think we all know. I've seen enough Tom Brady versus the Steeler games to know that if the Steelers are down three corners and potentially even Minka as well, I think I have a pretty good sense of this is going to be one where you may want to put this on TV too. But I think, going back to, this matchup in general, I just want to see the Steelers manufacture more pressure, man. They used to be so creative in the way that they would bring blitz. They didn't always have TJ Watt, right? Remember how long the Steelers went without having a 10 sack a year, double-digit sacks? They just couldn't get him. But they would be able to manufacture pressure with guys like Vince Williams back in the day, right? Mike Hilton off the edge as a slot corner. They got Brian Flores on this roster, or on this coaching staff, I should say. They got to figure out a way to get to Brady in this one. And I understand, like, blitzing Brady is not a winning formula. It hasn't been a winning formula because he's so good at reading and diagnosing, getting rid of the football, right? Cerebral, yada, yada, yada. He knows your signals. But if this is going to be a game where Brady's going to sit back in the pocket for 30 seconds of play and pick apart the Steeler defense, again, I'd rather it goes back to my mentality for this team all year. I'd rather watch him go down swinging than looking, right? Go down swinging. Brady's going to have some success, especially if it's going to be against the secondary that's as depleted as it looks like it's going to be. But let's see Devin Bush on some fire blitzes, right? I mean, let's see Maulet coming off the edge, and let's see this team, even if it's simulated pressure, right? And you're dropping out guys into coverage, fine. But confuse this offense. This is not a good Bucs offensive line because they are. Talk about the Steelers secondary being decimated by injury. I mean, going back all the way to training camp, this Bucs offensive line has been continually decimated by injury. Also, I think with Ogunjobi out, if Ogunjobi doesn't play, I mean, we're going to see more DeMarvin Leal. I think that's a good thing. Leal has been one of the better players on this on the Steeler defensive line, and certainly is deserving of more reps. But obviously, it's not going to only be Tom Brady that they're going up against. The Bucs do have a rushing attack with Leonard Fournette, although it's not been good this year. I think they're one of the worst deep rushing attacks in the league. In fact, let me pull it up because I believe they were 32nd in rushing in DVOA, if I remember correctly. Their rush DVOA is it's 29th. 29th in rushing DVOA for Leonard Fournette. They just really, I mean, again, bad offensive line. Leonard Fournette, I've always said Leonard Fournette is just, he is take what the defense and that offensive line has given him. I know playoff Lenny's a very good runner, but I've never been impressed with Leonard Fournette as a running back throughout his entire career. And if I have to watch Leonard Fournette, I mean, the Steelers run defense has not been good this year, especially, you go back to that Cleveland game, obviously. This is not the Cleveland rushing attack, though. And so this has got to be a game where at least if you are trying to imagine a way that the Steelers have a chance in this one, make Tom Brady and this Bucs team one-dimensional. Now, for any of you who are old enough to remember, that kind of doesn't matter against Brady because Brady was one of the first teams. Brady and the Patriots were one of the first teams to say, we're not even going to run the ball against the Steelers. We're just going to spread them out. We're going to go 5 wide on every play, and we're going to watch them, kind of self-destruct. So we'll see what the game plan is here, especially if the Steeler defense is as depleted as it looks like it could be. The other thing about this game is this defense could create turnover. I mean, they have done a decent job all year. I didn't even say a decent job. They've done a really good job this year of creating turnover. Obviously, you go back to week 1, did a pretty good job there. I would say pretty good job of creating turnover in that game. Minka had the interception against Mac Jones, which I thought was a really nice play as far as kind of baiting a bad quarterback in Mac Jones into that throw. That was a cover 2 look with Spillane down the seam as a kind of a Tampa 2, and Minka just kind of read it the whole way and was like, you think you have Spillane in one-on-one? You think we're that stupid? Came over and got that interception. Obviously, Minka also had the interception near pick 6 against Zach Wilson. And last week, for as bad as that Steeler defense was, and they were bad last week, they did, Levi Wallace had a really nice interception in the end zone. He's such a cerebral player. I know he's not fast, and that I know a lot of you are probably like, I could see far less of Levi Wallace in the future because, he's going to get beat, especially by guys like Gabe Davis, especially when he doesn't have safety help over the top. But he's such a cerebral player, man. I mean, again, if you're getting him in a situation where he can get his eyes on the quarterback and he can kind of read what's happening, he's a good player. He had a nice interception, and then Cam had the strip sack or the strip fumble on the goal line. Steelers create some turnover in this game. Don't turn the ball over themselves. This is again, the path to victory for the Steelers is super, super narrow. I mean, it's about as narrow as it could be because, look, the expectations going into this game, my expectation for the Steelers is how do they win football games right now? Forget about the Buccaneers as an opponent. How do the 2022 Steelers win football games right now with the roster as it is constructed? Because the thesis of this team coming into the year was, we're going to be a dominant defense. We're going to return to the dominant defenses we've seen back in 2019 and 2020. And we're going to have an offense that is just not going to screw it up for us. We're going to win games defensively. We're going to return to a better running game. The offense is going to screw it up. We have a veteran quarterback in Trubisky. And that's how we're going to win football games. Now, obviously, you can just ignore because offensively, it has not gone well whatsoever. Obviously, they've already switched quarterbacks there, and the running game is non-existent. But forget about all those problems. Put those problems aside. Number one on that thesis is what? We're going to go back to being a dominant defense. That's out the window. And we can talk about injuries, and yes, the problem is injuries. Fine, the problem is injuries. But we're talking about how does this team win football games right now. There's no part of me that believes that until this thing gets healthier, until TJ Watt comes back in, that they're going to return to anything close to dominant. I mean, I think that they could still be a top half of the league type of defense. But that's not good enough to beat Tampa. I mean, it's certainly not even close to good enough to beat Buffalo, right? So the expectation going into this one, do I think that they can win? I was really surprised to hear my co-host on AFC North Talk say, this game's going to be close, and this one will probably be a game in the fourth quarter. I just, and maybe I'm just scarred by 20 years of watching Tom Brady roast a Steeler defense and knowing the problems the Steeler defense already have, right? Knowing where their weaknesses already are pre-injury, and then looking at that injury report. I think like a lot of Steeler fans who have watched Brady for 20 years, I cannot sit through another Tom Brady destroys Steeler defense in Hines or whatever, Acrisure now type of game. But I think on the other side, again, with Kenny, I'm excited to watch him in these matchups, right? The guy went through, had 52 snaps against the best defense in the league and played really, really well. Again, wasn't a great performance because you love to see, big time throws and bigger moments. But he was not put in the best situation, both by the game plan itself, a little too conservative for my liking, and by his wide receivers, who I think at many times let him down in that one. But now here we have back-to-back games against two defenses that are very good, but very different stylistically. He comes out of these two games without looking like a disaster, without looking like, that was a real head scratcher of a game. Then again, once again, I go back to my point of we may have to start changing the conversation about Kenny. And I know it's early to change the conversation 2 games in. This is, Kenny's been really impressive. And this is a defense that, this is the first defense that I think really could confuse the shit out of him. Pardon my language, but I think this is the first defense that could really confuse him to the point where Like, I could see Kenny going out there with 3 interceptions and, like, it's an performance from him. Because this is very different from what he's seen in preseason. This is very different from what he saw last week. This is going to be a lot of, like, where is it coming? Where's the blitz coming from? And I got to get rid of it quick. And what am I looking at? And, do I trust my receivers and that kind of thing? Haven't seen that from Kenny yet. And again, if we don't, if Kenny doesn't have that kind of game, boy, Steelers might have found one. All right, let's get to your comments here. Again, you can leave a comment in chat. We'll do it here in our Q&A segment on the show. So we got one here from Tanner that says, did you see Canada's comments about struggling to get Calvin Austin aboard the, quote, moving train? That is the Steelers offense. That phrase has never seemed so inapplicable to this team. Indeed. I did see this. So for those of you who aren't aware, Thursdays are when the coordinators do their media obligations for the week. Calvin Austin right now is on injured reserve, but he has been designated to return. He has started practicing again. Seems like the guy's healthy. I mean, it seems like this was a situation where it's more of an IR stash than it is a true, like, the guy needed to go to IR. Seems like he's fully healthy. He could play whenever the Steelers want him to. But Canada was asked about it today, and he said, well, the tough part is, like, where do we fit him in? And, he missed so much team development and, all the kind of cliches that you hear. And one of the things he said is, like Tomlin likes to say, moving train. I don't know how we work him in, which it's funny. When I heard him say it today, I did have the thought of, like, Steeler fans are going to roast him for that comment. And they're not wrong. I'd be like, what exactly is this moving train, Matt? Like, what is this good thing that the Steelers got going? Like, we don't want to screw this up, right? We got so many good things happening for us on offense. I mean, one of the worst running games in the league and a passing game that the only life in this passing game right now is the 2 rookies. That's it. I mean, that's the only thing they got going for them offensively. You wouldn't want to screw that up by putting another rookie in there. Nah, especially one with like 4.3, 4.2 speed. I mean, one of the fastest, certainly would be the fastest player in this offense, certainly would represent something this team doesn't have, which is truly game-breaking speed. Nah, I mean, it's really hard to figure out where I want to put that in. I just think, I mean, Canada's. Now, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt in this way. I do kind of understand where he's coming from in that Austin is he's a really fast player, but he's also small. And so you do kind of have to figure out where do you want to work him in from a gadget type of situation. And then the other question is, where do you want to work him in from a roster spot consideration? Because remember, there's so many problems defensively with just having guys out, so who are you cutting? Because to activate him from IR, you have to cut someone. Would they cut Gunner? Because that would be the spot. Either you give Gunner his spot back as the return guy and cut Steven Sims, or you cut Gunner and activate Calvin Austin. I know people are going to say, we'll just put Calvin Austin as a return man. You could do that. I don't know if it couldn't be worse. He couldn't be worse than an All-Pro, right? I mean, he couldn't be worse. He couldn't fumble twice in 4 games as an All-Pro, right? I mean, that wouldn't happen for him. So yeah, Calvin Austin. I hope that they start working Calvin Austin in, because I'll give this to Canada. I thought the ways that he was being used in training camp were a little creative. I mean, it was a lot of end around stuff, but then, it was a lot of kind of using him as kind of the over route on on a play action. They moved him around a lot, using him in the backfield. I think it's gonna be fun, hopefully, and we'll see, because some of the stuff that happened in training camp is like, where is that offense? Where did the offense go that I watched in training camp, as far as the kind of moving pocket and all that? I mean, it just feels like the only time the Steelers move the pocket is what? When they run their sprint right, sprint left. Like, that's it. That's all they got. John here says, just for some positive vibes. Ooh, positive vibes only. I like that. Let's imagine our team is good. Imagine. How great would it be to watch our new franchise quarterback turn the page on Brady after over a decade of him bullying us by delivering an L? I agree. I mean, this is a special one for Kenny. And I don't even know that Kenny thinks it's that. I mean, Kenny clearly can't know how special it would be to watch him beat Tom Brady. How special that would be for us fans. I mean, for Kenny, this is going to be a special one anyway. This is his first start in Heinz. So, it's going to be, this is still going to be like a big game for Kenny. And again, he's going up against a Tampa defense it's going to give him some opportunity to push the ball, right? Again, these kind of blitz situations. If all Canada, if this is just check down Charlie game and all Canada's given Kenny is like, check it down. When the blitz comes from here, you just can check it down to Gentry. It's going to be scanner situation. John also says it's so troubling when in my mind Pickett is the least of my concerns when it comes to this offense. Yeah, exactly. No, the least of your concerns are two players, right? It's two players. Every single fan has the same thought, which is this offense is the only things they have going for them right now are their rookie quarterback and their rookie wide receiver. But I have big concerns about Claypool. Deontay, I don't even know if it's a concern about Deontay so much as it is he's just, it's almost like a situation where he's been telling you who he is for so many years and we just didn't want to believe it, right? And here we are. No, and that really is who Deontay is. He's just not a big time guy. Now, I don't want to get in him too much about the getting the foot in bounds stuff. I understand that the expectation is he should get his foot in bounds, but he's so close. This is we're talking about it's like millimeter or inches away from you. It's not like a whole foot out of bounds. So that's the kind of thing he can get better at as the year goes on. Sky Hunter says, let's not give Chase any more 50-50 balls downfield. Yeah, I agree. Let's see. The Cuda says Kenny P only has one start. It was against Buffalo. They had to play catch up the entire time. They did. Yeah. Kenny didn't get his first series. Oh no, they weren't down. I was going to say they were down 10-0, but they weren't because they missed that field goal, didn't they? Or was blocked or whatever. But yeah, he didn't get his, and then they went down to kick the field goal. And then they got a field goal. It was 10-3 when Kenny was on his second drive. Wasn't it though that the second and third drives were when were the drives that were run pass? I believe it was like field goal drive and then 3 straight drives of run pass, or was there another drive mixed in there? I may have it mixed up, but again, that was the fact that this team is so bad and yet it's almost like they're happy to be this bad, or they're at least it's like in soccer they have this phrase. Damage limitation, right? Or in Formula One, they have this idea of damage limitation, which is the idea that, hey, we're not going to do well in this race, but as long as we don't finish way near the bottom, that's better for us because it's a long season, I can make it up. With the Steelers, it almost seems like the Steelers, and from an offensive game plan perspective, it's like they come out in this damage limitation mode of, well, we're not going to win this game, but let's just not get blown out. And then, oh, by the way, they did all that run pass, and it didn't matter because Josh Allen was, one drive touchdown. Nick says Kenny's floor is definitely encouraging. It is. Because I was so wrong. About the whole idea of the high floor guy, right? His ceiling may be lower, but his floor is really high. And I was like, man, that's a worrisome thing for me. But the Steelers were right on that. At least give Kevin Colbert credit on that he did nail that. So far, one start. I know it's too early, but it's not. We'll see. John says Pickens needs to have as many targets as Deontay and Claypool combined this weekend. Yeah, a lot of people want to see kind of Pickens become the focal point of the offense. In order for that to happen, though, they have to widen out Pickens's route tree. I think they did that a little bit last week against Buffalo. He wasn't just running, he wasn't just all nines, go routes essentially. That's another thing, by the way. Oh, that just reminded me. Hold on a second. We can't move Calvin Austin into we can't move him in on a moving train. This offense is so diverse. How would we move him in? How would we work him in? Again, this is the same offense that had James Washington running the most 9 routes, the most go routes in the league. James Washington. That's all they do. They put him out there and go, you're going to run a go route. You couldn't just do that with Calvin, 5'7" guy, who, by the way, can place him outside. You can't just, we're just going to run Calvin out there on the, I think Pickens, by the way, also has, maybe not the most, but certainly he's up there. Let's see. John here says, we all know how well the Steelers play into rookie quarterbacks. Could you explain how they do so defensively? Also, do you foresee opposing defenses using the same tactics? Yeah, the Steelers have a couple things they like to do against. I mean, it's this bad quarterback. They have this kind of bad quarterback defense that they play. You saw it against Mac. What they did against Mac Jones is they basically said, we have like zero respect for you whatsoever. I mean, we're gonna blitz nobody. We're gonna play man across the board. And you're eventually gonna just make a mistake. Right? That was how they did it against Mac. It was very vanilla. It was like as vanilla as you get. It was a zero respect style. But generally, like, you go back to the LeBeau era. I mean, it was very much like we are just going to confuse the crap out of you with it. And again, LeBeau was so good at the zone blitz and all that. And it was very much like, where is this? It's very much what Kenny's going to face in this game. Where is the pressure coming from? I know it's coming somewhere. It's got to come from somewhere. Where is it coming from? Who's coming in? Who's dropping out? And then again, it's for a quarterback. Right? You have to decide as a quarterback what the protection should be. Where do I need to slide the protection? Is it coming here? Is it coming there? Then I got to figure out, okay, what coverage are they in, right? Is it middle field open, meaning that it's a too high, it's some form of a too high shell? Is it middle field closed, meaning that it's some sort of single high thing going on here? Are they in man? Are they in zone, right? I mean, I got to, do use motion and all that. There's a lot. The more you can throw at a young kid, the more you can kind of get him to like, I gotta worry about my protection. Where's the coverage coming from? What's my hot here? What's the coverage that they're in? Right? I mean, you just want to overload a kid until they just, until all of a sudden it's like, I got too much going on. I can't, I'm gonna end up in these kids playing YOLO ball out there because they're like, I don't know what I'm looking at. Like it's all too fast for me. Yeah. Nick says, how do the Steelers fix this running game? Do the Steelers have a run game coordinator, or is it just the O-line? So Munchak was the run game coordinator for sure, and then I believe the guy after him, whose name is going to, what was that guy's name? The offensive line coach post Sean Serrett, nailed it. He was the run game coordinator as well. He left, and then it was Adrian Clem last year, but that was the new Matt Canada thing, and I don't know if he was the run game coordinator or not. That's a good question. Do the Steelers mark it on their website? Let's just go to the Steelers coaches on their website because they may mark it. He's this guy's the run game coordinator. But as far as I know, the new guy, Pat Meyer, is not the run game coordinator. I think it's all Canada now. I mean, maybe they don't talk about it. But yeah, I think look, part of the problem for the Steelers, and I can't prove this because again, I'm just a guy on YouTube. But it does feel like from a tendency perspective, Chris Carter talked about this a little bit. Generally, when the Steelers run the ball, guys are flying to the ball. I mean, flying down to the line of scrimmage. They have no I mean, it is a tendency thing, I think, a lot of the time with the Steelers. And one of the things that was pointed out by Nate Tice is that you can tell if if Matt Canada is in a run or pass just by his use of motion. Because generally speaking, motion means run, and static. When it's static, it's pass. Motion is run, static is pass. Because he wants to, again, when you're using motion against run, you want to get defenses thinking one way and it's going the other. But if that's all you ever do, right? But again, it's a tendency thing. If I know that every time you run motion to one way, it's probably a run the other way, well, then I'm not going to get fooled by the motion. Oh, the motion's going that way. Maybe no. Like if I know from film that every time you send motion left, you run right. Okay, then guess what? That's where we're going. And it does feel like, again, I don't have it all charted here. I mean, I couldn't chart and tell you how bad they are. I know from the Bengals for sure this is a big problem for them because that one was an easy one when it was run pass for them. Are they in shotgun? It is a pass. Are they under center? It is a run. And they got out of that tendency this week. So I think tendency is a big part of it. All right, again, being, having multiple looks or the same look, but multiple things out of the same look. I may run motion this way, and then we're going to run a toss behind it. And then very later on in the game, I'll run motion out of the same formation the exact same way. And now we're running counter. I mean, again, it was Trubisky's fault, though. Should leave that alone. John says, let's use our rookies in this game. Warren, Pickens, Leal, obviously Kenny. You forgot one, John. You forgot one. The most important one of all. Maybe my favorite rookie, who probably isn't going to get a hat. And let's be quite honest, he doesn't deserve, when I talked about him on Monday or Tuesday's show. Mark Robinson. What an awesome player he was. Just again, go down swinging. You know what Mark Robinson's doing? He's going down swinging. I mean, that dude is flying around out there. Now, does he know where he's supposed to be, especially in pass coverage? No. But I at least, again, if this team is going to end up being like 3 or 4 win team, can they at least try? That's all I ask. Let's see. What else do we have here? John says, I'm not letting Levi Wallace off the hook for last week, even with the interception he was picked on all day. He was, but you had a tough matchup. When you have a quarterback with Josh Allen's arm, right, where he can get that ball into any window. I mean, there's no window where it's like, well, that window's shut. Like, didn't shut for Josh. It's just a really tough matchup. And remember, you know who Levi Wallace played for before he came to Pittsburgh. If there's anyone who knew the weaknesses of a Levi Wallace in coverage, it would be the quarterback who faced him in practice every single day for the last 4 years. And that would be the Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen. So, John, also, I like this one. John also said, wouldn't be the first time we've seen Fournette run on us. Yeah, I was at both those games. That was a fun year. 2017, the Steelers were 13-3 that year, and they were 1-0, so 13-4 essentially that season. And I went to 2 Steeler games that year, and it was both Jacksonville games. So, yeah. Now, Fournette didn't run all over the Steelers in the first one. He had an 80-yarder at the end to boost his stats. What were his numbers in that game? Did he have 160? So I think he had 80 in the game, which still isn't good. Let's look it up. I think, yeah. I don't remember him Bortles. Well, that was the 6th interception. Wasn't that the 5 or 6 interception game from Ben, too? Ben threw a gajillion interceptions in that game, and the Steelers lost 30-9. Okay, so, yeah. So Fournette ran 28 carries, 181 yards, but a 90-yarder right at the end. So he had 27 carries for 91 yards, which is a little over 3 yards a carry. Yeah. See, I don't remember him having a huge day that day, but obviously he's a little stat patter. The funny thing about our win condition as the 22 Steelers is watching Kenny chuck it up to Pickens 20 times a game. I mean, yeah. And that may be where do the so if they're gonna blitz, if the Bucs are gonna blitz and sit in single high with Winfield, where does Winfield go? Right? Does he kind of go towards Deontay, or he's gonna go towards Pickens? Because let's be honest, you think that the Steelers are gonna run any route that has double, that they're going to challenge deep? Yeah, right. That's another problem I have with the Steelers. In those situations, it's not like the Steelers just don't challenge down the field. I mean, again, if they play this style of football, where we play the game here, it is within 15 yards of the line of scrimmage, and it is within this little range. At least with Kenny, we started unlocking the middle of the field more. But again, you want to know why Buffalo's so good offensively? You want to know why Mahomes is so good offensively? You know why last year's Bengals were so good offensively? Because they attacked you everywhere. Everywhere. There was no part of the field that was off limits for them. Especially with the Bengals last year, who were just, if you ever left their receivers in one-on-one on the outside, it's guess what? You better pray you don't win this. We don't win this 50-50 ball. The Cuda says they do not have to cut a player. I thought they put him on the practice squad. They did not. He's on IR. So to activate him off of IR, you'd have to put someone on the practice squad and then elevate them on game day, which is a good point, actually. No, this is a good point. Because what they could do is they could put Steven Sims back on the practice squad, which is where he was a year ago, and just try to elevate him on game day. You still need to give someone a hat. You still need to take away a hat on game day. You can only have 46, 47 now. Is it 48 now because of the whole post-pandemic rules? Can I get some Giants versus Ravens commentary? Line is at Giants +6 at home. Yeah, the Ravens are going to crush the Giants by $1 billion. That line is about right. Yeah, because I'm not a believer in the Giants as a 4-1 team. What? Go look at any of their advanced numbers. DVOA, EPA per play, right? Yards per play, anything. On offense or defense, and tell me what you think they do well. Saquon's been Saquon in that running game has been better this year. I think they're top 10. as a running team. But like the idea that the Giants are going to like run the ball down the Ravens' throat and then they're going to shut down and like Wink is going to shut down Lamar, like I just don't buy that. I think the Giants are a nice story and certainly a far improved team from what they've been in years past. And I think it's cool that Dayball has them playing as well as they are, but they're still not in the Ravens class. I think the Ravens are still a top team in the AFC, and the Giants are going to end up being a team at the end that, because they've accumulated so many wins, they could fight for a wild card spot. But if you were like, if we're doing the whole contender versus pretender thing, I vote pretender. Isn't tendency for the run game something that should be an easy fix? Yes, but it involves self-scouting. It involves you understanding your own tendencies, right? It involves you kind of looking at your own numbers and saying, hey, when we're in, right? Because when you play defense and you're scouting an opposing offense, what are you doing? Well, you're charting everything they do because you want to know from a tendency perspective, when they come out in 11 and it's bunch, what are they more likely to do? Right? When they come out in 12, what are they more likely? Like what do they do from a tendency perspective? When it's second and short and they're in this formation, what do they do? But here's the question. And this is where I gave Canada a lot of credit because I thought Canada did a lot of this stuff. And I thought this is one thing I thought Fichtner did none of. How much of that the Steelers do? How much of Matt Canada is him looking back and saying, okay, when I'm in, like, what are my own tendencies? Just so I know. Just so I know, like, okay, this is probably what the defense is thinking about what I'm thinking. I mean, it's like, again, I know it's, we're going to get into that. What's that movie? Half Baked, where they're like the Buster, it's like that kind of thing for offenses. But that's what it is, Okay. So to this point in second and short, when we're in this formation, I've done this every time. Like I've done this a lot of the time. So let me break that tendency here. And you can even do this within a game, right? Where it's coming out in certain, setting things. It's one of those things where, early in the game, you set up something where you say, okay, we're going to show this look early. We're going to see what they do so we can come back to it later with a different play or a different concept off of the same look based on what we got, right? Especially if we get the same look. Now, do they do a whole lot of that? I mean, I think Alex Kozora did a great job the other day of pointing out one of the things that is most frustrating about Matt Canada and his offense, which is they just don't run a whole lot of different concepts. There's just not a whole lot of stuff that they do, period. And I think Kozora charted it as like the Steelers ran the same concept like 9 times in the same game, something like that. It's crazy stuff. I mean, it's really disappointed in Canada because boy, is he so different than I thought he was going to be. I thought he was going to be like a creative mind. I even said, you want to hear a really dumb take that I had? I said that Matt Canada would be up for a head coaching job after 1 or 2 years. Now, that's probably true. He probably is up for a head coaching job. I mean, some high school somewhere will take him. So, John says, Mark Robinson will be great to see. How he's a raw talent, but can't be worse. Here's the problem, John. He's just not the fix for what the problem with the defense is. I think he would be a great, like, Vince Williams type, thumper in the running game. But the problem for the Steelers, especially like right now in these matchups, is not that they're missing a Mark Robinson type. Now, he'd be a good blitzer because he's coming a million miles an hour. But he just, he doesn't fix the problem the Steelers have. The Steelers have a problem right now with getting pass rush and then, having competent secondary players who can communicate and not cut a crosser on a deep post route. Poor Trey Norwood, man. And what's tough, here's what's tough about that play. You have Gabe Davis. lined up on Levi Wallace. And Levi Wallace is a 4'6" player at a corner. So he needs safety up over the top. And the safety up over the top he has is Trey Norwood. And in case you guys aren't familiar, Trey Norwood is, I believe, a 4'7" 40 guy. And he thinks it's a crosser. He actually cuts underneath. So it is that was like a worst case scenario Steeler play. Corner who literally just cannot keep up. Safety who the only chance he can keep up is if he gets enough depth. And instead, meow, he comes flying down. It's like, uh-oh, this is, yeah. And that is that. Kenny's presser, where he mentioned the standard has to be raised, really impressed me. This guy's a rookie, but he feels like a leader. Yeah, he's cool, man. It is cool to see him kind of we got to just start like winning's going to fix this stuff. Guys got to play better. I do. Yeah, I mean, his attitude is cool. But you know who else talked like a quarterback? You know who because I was at training camp, I was credentialed the year that he was a rookie. Mason Rudolph. I remember listening to Mason Rudolph's first. It was outside of the cafeteria at St. Vincent. And I was there, we were all talking to him. I was asking about the differences between Oklahoma State and here. And I remember thinking like, dude, this guy talks like a quarterback. Like he like feels like he's the part. Then he got on the field. So that was the difference there. But no, I think the to your point though, John, it's very clear. This team rallied around Kenny before Kenny was even on the field. And I think that's the best thing you can say about him. Before Kenny ever got on the field, you could very much tell that every player on that offense and very much the wide receiver core was ready for it to be Kenny time. So Matt says, if you could choose between Jalen Carter and the Bama edge guy, who would you take? So Jalen Carter, I haven't watched enough of because he's really starting to get the majority of his reps this year. Did I not say Mason Rudolph? If I said someone else, I meant Mason Rudolph. So I haven't watched enough of Jalen Carter. Now, obviously, Bama has played a couple really important games, literally close games. So I have gotten a lot to see Will Anderson this year. And obviously, who hasn't seen him over the 3 years that he's been in college. So I've seen a lot more of Will Anderson. And I think his raw athleticism next to TJ Watt or across from TJ Watt. Holy cow. It is a problem. It's and then, you add to it, right? I mean, whatever Leal ends up becoming and however long Hayward can be there. Yeah, I right now I would go with Will Anderson, but I have much more of a feel for who Will Anderson is. I want to watch. I've heard a lot about Jalen Carter, about how he's even better than some of the guys that got taken from that Georgia defense, but I haven't seen enough. I know he got some reps last year and he's getting more this year, but I want to watch more of his tape before I make this call entirely. All right, and then the last one, because we're nearly at an hour, and as you guys know, I got a strict rule here on Steeler Country. We only go over an hour by like 3 or 4 minutes. Nick says, how's Robinson's coverage compared to Spillane? Well, Spillane at least knows where he's supposed to be. Good at getting his depth and understanding. He had that really nice play where there was the crosser. Was this in preseason, though? This might have been in preseason, so what do I care? But anyway, it was like a nice crosser. And Spillane kind of read it, kind of got a head start, and was able to break it up. Spillane's a very cerebral player, and that's why he gets a hat. He's a very good communicator. Robinson he's raw. He's just super raw. So like Spillane's a better coverage guy right now. I think for what Terrell Austin wants and all that, as far as like being able to communicate of what's happening and if Spillane's calling out checks and whatnot, then that's it's pretty clear that that's why Spillane gets a hat. And I don't think they would give that to a rookie over. I think you would see Robinson on the field on obvious rundowns. But once again, like whose hat are you taking away to give Mark Robinson a hat? Yeah, that's the thing. So anyway, all right, we are just about approaching an hour. So that's going to do it for me today. I am not predicting a Steeler win. The line is 8. The line is 8 for the Buccaneers right now. Okay, there's one more came in, Fred. And Fred, you got me with this one. This is a good question, and I want to answer it before we leave. Who do you think replaces Canada as OC next year? I'll tell you who I think it is. It's Mike Sullivan. And I hate it. Because it's another like promote from within, just blah, 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 blah. But I don't know. I hate to be like, super negative about Tomlin all year about this stuff, but don't you kind of feel like one of the reasons why Canada got hired and why Canada's offense and Fichtner's offense, while they're not exactly identical, they have the exact same problems as far as like, the lack of any aggression and the general conservative nature. Don't you feel like the reasons why that happened is because like it's kind of an offense built in Tomlin's image, isn't it? I mean, isn't that can't you draw like a straight line between like Fichtner to Canada and then Canada to Sullivan, and it's all because like we want Tomlin's just trying to find a way to be conservative but also be effective. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong about whoever the next OC is. Hell, I hope I'm wrong about Canada getting fired and like he actually turns it on the rest of the year. This thing gets more explosive and this offense turns on, especially when they get out of. Be interesting to see what happens with this offense when it gets out of this rut right now, where they're playing all these really good teams. Be interesting to see what happens there. All right, that'll do it for Steeler Country today. I'm not predicting a Steeler win. Could they cover? I don't think they will. And again, I think this team is going to struggle to get anywhere past the teens. And I've been burned so many times by Brady. Like, am I really going to predict today that this team is going to keep Tom Brady in the 20s? I hope they do, but I mean, again, I hope they do as a fan. But as far as like, what is my brain telling me? My brain is telling me this one's going to be like very similar to last week, right? 34-13 or something like that. Remember, I know the Bills only scored 38 last week. They could have put up whatever number they wanted. I mean, they could have just picked the number that they wanted to put up there. They called the dogs off real early in that one. So yeah, I mean, I think this one's going to be not close. But like in boxing, right? You got a puncher's chance. We got a Kenny chance in this one. We got a Kenny chance. Kenny always gives us a chance because Kenny Pickett, thus far, above the line. He's the one good thing this team's got going for him. So Kenny Pickett, pull off the upset on Sunday. And I'll be back on Tuesday of next week to talk about it right here on Steeler Country.